Don't forget to like, and don't forget to subscribe if you're not a subscriber, so you can get those notifications about episodes that I upload on a consistent basis. You want to keep up with things. So this is going to be real short. This is another episode. I'm going to do a brief commentary on Bill Mahar. You should know who Bill Mahar is, but in case you don't, he's a stand-up comedian, been around for over 3 decades. I've been a fan of his, so I'm not critiquing him in a negative light, but just doing some commentary on his show last week that he did on Real Time with Bill Mahar. As I said, he's a comedian, does stand-up. He started out in the movie DC Cab. He had a show on ABC called Politically Incorrect that got canceled back in the early days of the aftermath of 9/11 because of some comments he made. Then he disappeared for a while and has come back and been quite successful with his show Real Time with Bill Mahar, which is on HBO. Has a lot of good guests on there. But lately, Bill, I don't know whether as he's getting older or something is making him go a little bit to the right. Some things he says are actually, I think, even a little dangerous. But let me dissect and then let you see some of his comments from his show last week. So, I've done an episode before on Bill Mahar because of his commentary on American slavery and almost justifying it. You can go and find that episode. But last week on his show, as he has on some other shows in the past, he kind of went after COVID and our country's response and the world's response to COVID, kind of downplaying it. He has taken that position for a long time. Bill caught COVID himself after he was vaccinated. I guess he had a mild case because he just canceled his show for a few weeks and then he was right back. But he, from the onset, was saying, oh, COVID is no big thing. Why are we closing everything down? And in addition to that, really stressing that the only people were dying were overweight people, elderly people, people that were sick. Really some comments that were really ill-conceived. So I want to just start off, let you hear some comments that he made on his show that was just on last week, and then I'll do some commentary about that. So let's go.
Okay, so I mentioned the California ended our COVID emergency. I walked in the building today, and for the first time in I don't know how long, the guard did not have a mask on. For a while, we haven't had to wear masks because the germs know who the celebrities are, you know. But the guard did. So I feel like we're entering this phase now with COVID where we are in a period of, we can have perspective, we can look back, it's over. And so there's been a number of studies recently that have come out about things like natural immunity, mask wearing, lockdowns, and of course the big one this week about the lab leak theory. I feel like the people who are the dissenters are looking pretty good. I was one of them. I remember getting a lot of shit from a lot of places. Somebody dug this up for me this week. The Daily Beast, had a headline, Bill Mahar pushes Steve Bannon Wuhan lab COVID conspiracy. Yes, it was just Steve Bannon. Well, it was, the former head of the CDC, it's the FBI, it's the Energy Department. We don't know. Like I said, we shouldn't politicize it. But would you agree that the dissenters are looking better these days?
Well, Bill, first of all, over 1 million Americans died of COVID. And nationwide, over 7 million people died of COVID. That's just an estimate. The estimate, I think, is off by several million people worldwide. I think we're probably well over 10 million because, of course, in some nations around the world, they don't have accurate ways of really counting all the people who did die from COVID. But that's a lot of people. This was a global pandemic. And to say that we overreacted here in the United States is ridiculous. Bill, you live in California. And if you go back to when COVID was at its peak, California, the hospitals were full. They didn't have enough respirators to save people's lives. I remember seeing on the news people who were caught in a fire in their home, badly burned. People in car accidents with broken limbs going to a hospital, and the hospital had police officers outside telling the people, we can't take you in the ER. We have no room, and sending them to another hospital. And of course, in California and in many places that are outside of Los Angeles or the big city, they may have a long drive to go to another hospital. And it was very difficult in California. So you live in California, Bill, and I'm sure you should remember that. In places like New York City, where there was so many cases of people dying because of people being on top of each other, not like California, where people are using mass transit, being in the subway, where in a subway car, there's hundreds of people congested, talking to each other, coughing, sneezing. To say that, we overreacted because we closed down the schools or because we had to ask people not to go to work for several months. There was no way in major cities, just taking New York as an example, that has over 1.1 million children. Most of them don't take school buses. Most of them take public transportation. That you would have put over 1 million kids on public transportation every day to spread COVID on the subway system, on the bus system, to then take it home to their parents or their elderly grandparents, to then come back to the school and infect people the next day and say, well, some people will just die. I mean, we as a nation did not overreact. And I know we're all tired of hearing about COVID. I lost a few friends to COVID. And I think that the country did a good job. And it's easy to play Monday morning quarterback. But when COVID hit, we didn't know how bad it was, how bad it could get. It was only getting worse. And no one should really be able to sit back and say, oh, it was nothing. We just overreacted with all of these bans about this and that. And we should have kept the movie theaters open and the restaurants open and just let people go about their business. No, that was a mistake. And by the way, Bill, COVID is still around and it's still killing people. Not to mention that there have been numerous clinical studies that we don't still know the long-term effects of COVID-19. We know that these studies have shown that people have long-term heart disease, memory loss, erectile dysfunction, motor skill loss, and brain fog. The other thing that he talked about on his show is, once again, he went after, and then on another podcast that he does, he started talking about wokeness and giving a bad example with wokeness, that it's went too far. And as a example of trying to point out why, in his opinion, it went too far, he gave this extreme example of a school in, I believe it's Oakland, that was considering or did make a name change to the school from Abraham Lincoln because some people were upset. And that the school, I think, may have been up for a name change anyway, because some of the attendees of the school had a fairly large Native American population, and because Abraham Lincoln authorized the largest hanging of people in American history at one time, which is a large group of Native Americans. And they were upset about this and this school name change. That was one of the reasons this was going on. And, my position is, I don't know how you feel about it. You can make some comments that, people who look at things that happened 100 years or 150 years ago, it's not that we're judging people, but it's that in today's society, we have to live and say, is what this person did right? And maybe they shouldn't have a street named after them. Maybe I, as a parent, don't feel comfortable with my child going to a school named after Confederate generals, named after people who owned slaves. Because to me, though I'm judging it today, I know, and most of society knows and will agree, that what those people did was wrong, even though it may have been 150 years ago. So, Bill, African Americans, as an example, don't feel comfortable, like I said, going to schools named after people that owned their ancestors. African American men and women in the military should not have to train on U.S. military bases named after Confederate generals, as is the case in parts of North Carolina where there are military bases there. It really is something that only this country does these types of things, and we think it's normal. So, as I said, this will be short, and I'm wrapping up here. But Bill, as someone of Jewish ancestry, if you as a young person, as a child, and as a high school student grew up in Germany, would you want to go to a high school named Adolf Hitler High School? Would you have wanted to go to a middle school named Joseph Goebbels Middle School? Of course not. So how can you be someone who considers yourself, you know, not a neoconservative or anything, and maybe you consider yourself liberal or progressive? I don't know what you consider yourself nowadays, but you go out with black women. You've had black girlfriends. So I don't understand why you, as a comedian, take these positions, one, with COVID because you're not a doctor, and two, you aren't empathetic to people of color or Native Americans who have issues with things named after people who did ill will to them. So my message is stay woke. Yes, Bill, Native American people, Hispanic people, African American people, other oppressed people on this planet are going to stay woke because we know things that were done to us were wrong. Whether it was 50 years ago, 100 years ago, 150 years ago, it doesn't matter. Wrong is wrong. And as I said, all you have to do, Bill, is look at what was done to the Jewish people during the Holocaust. And I think you will agree. Okay, hope you enjoyed. Don't forget to subscribe.